The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for Monday, the 21st of March, 2016, are currently trading with gold at $1,243.70 an ounce, silver $15.82 an ounce, Texas crude $39.44 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently sitting at about 411 U.S. currency. Today in history, the year 1975, Ethiopia abolishes its monarchy after 3,000 years. The emperors of Ethiopia claimed direct blood lineage from King Solomon himself via his encounter with the Queen of the South, or Queen of Sheba, or Ethiopia, at least according to the Ethiopian Kibra Nagas. The end of the Solomonic line of kings. Today in history. In recent news, the Supreme Court decided today to take up the patent battle between Apple and Samsung. This design patent case is the first to make it up to the Supreme Court in more than 120 years. The dispute dates back to 2011 when Apple accused Samsung of copying some basic design features of the iPhone. A jury initially sided with Apple in 2012, awarding them over $1 billion. Though the amount was reduced in appeals, a panel of judges upheld the damages owed to $500 million. Samsung agreed to pay the figure, but solely on the condition that it could get their money back in the case of a successful challenge or appeal. After petitioning the Supreme Court to review the case, the justices have agreed to do so. Samsung said in a statement that it hopes that the review can lead to a fair interpretation of patent law that will support creativity and reward innovation. And according to Charles Duan, director of Public Knowledge's Patent Reform Project, quote, when you have a big disconnect between the value of a patent and the amount of money that can be awarded for the infringement of a patent, you end up with really bad incentive. The losers here are the consumers. The Midland Police Department posted a Facebook video that shows them setting off seized fireworks. Their bomb squad lended a hand to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives during the course of 3.5 days in Glasscock County in the setting off and disposal of roughly 20,000 pounds of seized fireworks. It was also reported that Odessa, Lubbock, and Amarillo's bomb squads were also there to watch the show, though it was done during the day to avoid the spectacle. Midland PD stated that these fireworks could not be donated since they had been seized by the BATFE and their destruction was court-ordered. This is Rick Rohde with your lowdown for Monday, March 21st, 2016.
Good friends, good evening and welcome here on this Tuesday evening, the 22nd of March, 2016. It's time for INN World Report Radio here on the Great Logos Radio Network. My name is Tom Kiley, and I have the honor to bring this program to you on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. And we have a great show lined up for you tonight. Actually, this whole week is going to be good. So far, I've got Ellen Brown will be joining us in just a little while. She wrote an excellent article about a week ago, so I asked her to come on to talk about it. I'll tell you about that in a moment. And then the return of Roger Stone on INN World Report Radio. He'll be with us on Thursday evening. He's got another new book out, and we're going to be talking about that. But, of course, since he's been on the program back in November of last year, there's an awful lot that has transpired. So we're going to be talking with Roger Stone all about that. I'm sure a lot of the Donald Trump phenomena, which, you know, if you're a regular listener to this show, we have to be careful, right? A regular listener. Radio is great. It's good for your elocution. Okay, so in any case, if you are a regular listener to this show, you know that it's my position that the Donald Trump phenomena is rather the global revolt that we see going on here in the Western countries at least. Excuse me. I don't know if you want to add the Middle Eastern countries into that as well, but people are chafing at the ridiculous rule of the globalist oligarchs that run certainly what we might term as the Western world, and they're trying to get their hands on as much of the rest of the world as possible. And people are chafing at that. In Greece, you've had Syriza, the first shot fired over there. I don't know how much longer they're going to go with that before they come back with something else. But the contagion is spreading around the world. There's a lot of people that are unhappy, and now it's come to these shores. And in this country, the people that are standing up and riding that wave of discontent are Donald Trump and pretty much Bernie Sanders. However, having said that, as you all know, Donald Trump is much more of what you might call an outsider. Sorry about that. An outsider when it comes to party politics. Yes, he's a business person who has had to deal with it and make contributions to both sides and so forth, but he hasn't held elected office and hasn't been, I don't think, an official member, at least through having held office of either the Republican or the Democratic Party. So there you have it. Anyhow, so we're going to be talking with Roger Stone about that. I'm going to be talking about it unless you all call and want to talk about something else. So the phone lines, let's open those up right now. I'm going to turn on the phone lines. The phone lines are open, and you can call in 512-646-1984. Ellen Brown joining us in about 20, 25 minutes or so. I asked Ellen, as I said, to join us because, she comes out with, I don't know, maybe about an article a week or so, or maybe 2 a month. And they're often very good, very insightful when it comes to the economic situation. That's the great thing about the alternative media. There are so many of us working together now, networking, linking up. Whether you may be a writer, a journalist, a researcher, an author, a filmmaker, a commentator, somebody making videos, somebody doing like what I'm doing and hosting a radio program. But we all get to work together. And as you know, over the years, I've had an opportunity, thanks to you, the INN World Report listening audience, because I always tout you all as a great reason for somebody to come on the show. I'm able to, get in touch with a lot of people. Now, look, sometimes I take a shot. I read something that looks really good. I get somebody on, and it's, not that great. I'm told by you all that I treat these people good. I don't usually argue with people too much. I mean, I like to argue and debate, no question, but I don't let it get out of hand or uncivil. And but oftentimes they turn out to be really great people, and we just keep building up a great audio, list of people that we can tap. Not only that, but some friends of mine that have worked with me in the alternative media over the years. That we had INN World Report was a television program for 7 years, and that took a great effort. There was a lot of people working on it, and many of those people have gone on to other things now. And I'm not going to mention any names, but some of them are producing television shows now, and you would recognize the names of the channels if I said it. And we're in touch with each other, and we help each other out. And I was just called today and got a great guest for somebody who wanted to comment about the situation in Belgium, which we could talk about also. So anyhow, it's because of that we have these great people, and then we notify each other. People send out emails, and I have a great group of people that I correspond with multiple times a day. Some of them are out of the country, some of them are right there in Austin and different places. And these are all people who are very sharp, and they find really, really good information, and we network and we send it to each other. And that's how the world is changing. I'm sure I'm not the only person doing that. I'm sure you all get emails from people. Hey, did you see this? Hey, look at that. And it's having an effect. It's having a cumulative effect, if you ask me. Now, the interesting thing is, how's the oligarchy going to react to this? Well, we'll find out. They're certainly not happy with the insurgency of Donald Trump at all, either the right or the left. They're all in 100% agreement. They want to stop Trump. Of course they do, because he's going to turn them out. Donald Trump wins the presidency running in the Republican Party, and especially if he wins big, he will be the leader of the party. He will get to set the tone. He will get to turn out a lot of the rat bees. Can I say bastard on the show in that context, Deb? You can whisper in my ear and let me know. But he would turn out a lot of the rat bees that have sold us all a bill of goods. I didn't believe it, but a lot of people did, and people are just getting tired of it now. People are saying no. And when you see these same old politicians now, they want your vote. It's time for another presidential election, and they're just talking and talking as if everything was just hunky-dory. They're saying the same garbage that they said 10, 20, 30 years ago. I'm going to bring jobs. What do you mean you're going to bring jobs? You're being paid by oligarchs to ship jobs, not bring jobs, ship jobs. All right. That's what's happening. Yeah, I'm told. I don't know. Maybe somebody can cross-check this for me, but I'm told that, if you want to up and move your factory to another country, the government will help you do it. How about that? Government will help you do it. So, in any case, what's the plan here? People are just disposable, I guess. And Donald Trump is hooked into that, and he's talking about it. There's a lot of talk now. 512-646-1984, please call. There's a lot of talk now about the resurgence of nationalism. I guess it was Trotsky and that ilk who tried to, he thought it would be great to just sort of break down borders and, everybody just didn't need countries anymore and all that stuff. Of course, the globalists feel the same way. They want to turn everything into one big prison camp or plantation or whatever. And that's gone about as far as it can go. It's stretched about as far as it can, and now it's breaking, and people are waking up and saying, wait a minute, yeah, it's really nice to be hunky-dory with everybody and to be nice with other people and, be accepting of other people. That's nice. But when did that mean that you had to be accepting of other people at the expense of your own culture? I've been using this example lately. For those of you who bake cookies, let's just say, you make them from scratch, you know what it's all about. Now I'm not suggesting that you ground your own flour, maybe you do. But you can pick ingredients, you can do it the right way, and you can, observe the process, make sure it's being done the right way. You can mix it all together the right way. And you come out with a cookie for your loved ones, you know what I mean? Something that's nice. Maybe it's not a cookie, maybe it's a dinner, maybe you grew some of the ingredients in the meal yourself in your organic garden in the backyard. Okay. That's culture, that in a way, right? That's natural. That's people. But what they want to do is they want to turn it into, when you go to the supermarket and you buy a package of cookies and they look like cookies and they kind of taste like cookies and they kind of break like cookies, but they're not the same. They're full of all kind of stuff that's going to have to, make sure that they last in case they don't sell right away. Stuff that's not good for you, stuff that's antibacterial. And guess what? You got a lot of bacteria in your gut and they get killed when you eat this stuff. And that's not good. That's why people get sick. But what happens is like they back a truck up to a building and it's a dump truck, like as an example, and they pour a whole bunch of stuff into a hopper and back another truck up and pour a whole bunch of stuff in a big machine, turns it around. And you don't listen, if you think they're buying the highest quality materials to make their cookies, that are not GMO, that are not toxic. I got a bridge I'd like to sell you, not far from my house. It's been around for a while, but it's very sturdy and, it's a great bridge. I'll sell it to you. No, it's the cheapest, most efficient stuff they can find. They pour it into these machines. The machines crank it out. And then what happens is there's a conveyor belt, right? And it spits out a dollop of this stuff on the conveyor. Then it goes through the oven or a whole bunch of dollops of it or whatever. That's the difference. They want to turn the whole world into that. They want to turn the whole world into that, right? Maybe you enjoy the culture of a certain part of France where they've been making a special kind of cheese the same way for 500-600 years with their bacteria that's local to them and the culture that they have. Or maybe you like something from Switzerland, or maybe you like something from Asia, maybe that people have been working on and then they put a lot of authenticity in it. They don't want that. They want to turn the whole world into Velveeta because it's cheaper for them to maintain. And they think that you're stupid. You're not going to notice the difference. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio, 512-646-1984. We didn't talk about Belgium yet, but we could do that when we get back if you like. Ellen Brown joining us in about 15 minutes. Tom Kiley, INN, right back with you after this.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
All right, good friends, welcome back. Tom Kiley here, INN World Report Radio, every Tuesday and Thursday night here on Logos, your radio network, where you can hear a good, clean, alternative voice, something different. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing in about 15 minutes or so. Ellen Brown wrote a great article about Hillary Clinton in Libya and what her emails reveal. All of this baloney that they sold everybody on as to why we needed to destroy that country. Because, Muammar Gaddafi was bad for his people and he was killing his people. All this, in her emails, it's got nothing to do with that. It's all talking about how they can get into the markets there and, how they can take over this, take over that, which is what it's really all about. But the problem with y'all is that you're too decent, We're not like ancient Rome where they could go to the Colosseum and watch human beings tear each other apart and get thrilled by it, or they could drag back the defeated rulers of some region that they wanted to take over and kill them in front of everybody, and everyone would start screaming. We're not like that. I would call that progress, but they would call that an impediment to their greed. So they have to, instead of just saying, hey, everybody, why don't we just go and kill the Libyans and take everything they have? They can't say that because we're supposed to be different. We're supposed to be better than that. Call it the Christian era. I don't know what you want to call it, but so they have to fabricate things. They have to make stories up. So that's what people like Hillary Clinton get paid to do. That's their job, to, be the interface between you and the oligarchy that really runs the show, and to explain to you how we got to do this and we got to do that. The people that say we got to do, they're the ones that you don't see them doing anything. You see them sending other people's kids. You don't see them. When we got to do this and we got to do it, it's like, here's a gun. You go do it. Go ahead. Here's a ticket. And their kids certainly aren't doing it, are they? So that's what it looks like happened in Hillary Clinton's email. So Ellen Brown's going to come on and talk about that with us. I also have a question for her. It looks like they're really starting to consider helicopter money in Europe, at least. Where Ben Bernanke, I think, said at one time, if things get so bad, maybe they just have to print money and give it to people to spend. Give it to people to spend. Drop it out of helicopters. Well, how about a jubilee? You don't have to give me money, but what about a jubilee? Why don't you just clear what I owe off the books? Didn't they used to do that in ancient times? Because the system has to have a reset once in a while, and you might as well have a reset that doesn't, really hurt the vast majority of people. How would you all feel about a jubilee? I mean, they lent you this money they created out of nothing. They're expecting you to pay it back, every penny of it, at interest, which they didn't create. So you're out there scratching and clawing. They take the jobs away, so you can't do it. And it's like nothing from nothing is nothing, right? I was in Denver, Colorado last week. That's why I wasn't on the show Thursday, at a bankruptcy hearing. And it's absolutely disgusting how this bank is trying to claw back money from somebody who they've actually broken now. They've broken this guy. Now they're going to take his house. And it was this bank didn't even make the original loan. They inherited the bank who made the original loan because they were so shady that the FDIC pushed them out of business and made and this other bank bought out their assets. And one of their assets was this loan that wasn't being paid on. Well, the loan wasn't being paid on because the loan was put together by a bunch of crooks who are in jail now. Okay, some brokers who put some of their own money into it, and then they found this bank to put the rest of the money up for a construction project. And the bank put up, I'm going to use round numbers and say that, the bank put up a couple of million and these other people put up $1 million. Let's just say it's a little more than that. But so the bank put their couple of million up and the other people only put up, about 20% of their share. So the construction project couldn't finish. And then the feds caught them and threw them in jail. So my friend with his building, that's not complete because the loan was put together by crooks and a shady bank that was dealing with crooks who went out of business. A new bank got it, and they're acting like everything. Hey, I don't care about what happened. Hey, this says right here. They were. There's a term for it. The loans were. It was like a joint loan, but they want to act like it was a separate loan. And they're ruining this guy. They're just ruining him. Because it's a bank. Because they can afford to out-lawyer you, I suppose. But wouldn't that be nice if he got a jubilee and could keep his building and his home, which it looks like it's not going to happen. Keep his building and his home, but that would be nice, wouldn't it? So anyway, what do you think? Do we need helicopter money? I'm going to ask Ellen Brown this, or how about just the good old-fashioned jubilee? instead of paying it back. They make it another. Who's losing the money? If the Federal Reserve created it out of thin air and you can't pay them back, then they take your house. They got something. They didn't lose anything. Nice work if you can get it. And people are getting fed up. So anyhow, yeah, in Brussels happened today, and it's terrible. It's a tragedy. People died. But even that, it's so ridiculous. Now that we do have alternative media, we can talk about it. It's crazy. I mean, either way you look at a terrorist attack like that, even if you take it at face value, that some people called ISIS are mad over in the Middle East, and they come into Europe, maybe in these waves of immigrants, which Donald Trump said we got to, put a break on until we can screen them properly. And he gets excoriated for that. It's a Neverland. It's a magic world. None of this stuff happens. So we're up there. We're over in the Middle East, blowing everything up, tearing everything apart, and people get mad and they want to make us stop it. So they come here and they say, "Here's a teeny weensy taste of your medicine. All right, what you're doing to us illegally. The Iraq War was illegal. Sure, what they're doing in Syria, illegal. And we're not going to come to Europe and kill 1 million people like you did in Iraq. But here's a few. And we're not allowed to reflect on why this might be happening. We're not allowed to, because if you start pulling on that thread, what the hell are we doing in the Middle East in the first place? Who is that benefiting? It's benefiting some oil oligarchs and the state of Israel. All right, but that's if you take it at face value. All right, it has been known to happen. Many more people have died in Europe in the 70s and 80s through state-sponsored terrorism that elements of a government were doing to their own people. In Italy especially, called Gladio, an underground, off-the-books, illegal secret army set up by the British and the Americans after World War II. And they were supposed to fight if the Russians came. Of course, the Russians never came, and they never were going to come. And they instead started to use them to blow up Italians and blame it on the communists. So who's to say we don't have shoot-em-ups going on to blame it on ISIS? If you notice, right, what happens? A lot of times these people are dead. Dead men tell no tales, or they're supposed to be dead. That poor Sonarov kid up in Boston was supposed to be dead. They fired so many bullets into that boat. But, they missed. And then what? They hit him in the throat. He couldn't talk for a few days when they first got him. And then his lawyer says, let's make a deal. And the FBI puts out a bulletin. The bomber had a black backpack. And it was bulging because of the pressure cooker bomb inside. They got video of this kid walking around with a white backpack that was not bulging, that was so light that he slung it over one shoulder. But who cares about the truth? He was supposed to be dead. You wouldn't even need a trial. That's why they kill him, No trial for Lee Harvey Oswald. Remember that one? Lee Harvey bin Laden. All right, Tom Kiley, INN World Report. I see Robert's on the line. Robert, unfortunately, you called right at the end of the segment, and we're supposed to have Ellen Brown. So, Robert, hang on. If we can't get through to Ellen, we'll take you. Otherwise, please call back after Ellen. Tom Kiley, INN, right back with us.
Fake tanning is marketed as a safe way to get that healthy glow without spending time in the sun. But it's actually not so safe after all. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, back in a moment with the dark side of spray-on tans and self-tanning lotions.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Americans spend millions on fake tanning products for that sun-kissed look, but are they safe? No. The active ingredient is typically a chemical called dihydroxyacetone, or DHA, that works by producing free radicals to darken the skin like an apple when it's cut. Scientists say DHA disrupts the normal cell cycle, causes genetic damage, and accelerates cell death. What's more, self-tanners often contain coumarin and ethylparaben, chemicals linked with cancer that can kill skin cells and cause reproductive harm. So spend 20 minutes in the sun instead and leave that fake stuff on the shelf. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
You're listening to the Logos Radio Network at logosradionetwork.com.
Okay, friends, welcome back now, as promised. Ellen Brown, one of our go-to people on the economy, and I'm so glad that we have Ellen because she just really not only hits the nail on the head, but is spearheading some real good common sense in economics for some time now. And she recently wrote an article about Hillary Clinton in Libya, which a lot of people did not have their eye on, that ball, and it's very interesting. Ellen, welcome back to INN.
Thanks, Tom.
So, Ellen, it was a little bit off your usual beat, this article, I thought. Maybe I'm wrong, and if I am, point it out. And not that anyone should go off their usual beat, but it was very interesting. You were talking about how in all of the brouhaha over Hillary Clinton's emails and whether or not she was using classified emails on a private server, all this stuff, nobody was bothering to actually look at the content of the emails, and that's what your article was about. Is that a little bit of a deviation for you? And B, tell us about the story.
Okay. Well, I have written about Libya before. In 2011, when we went into Libya, I wrote a couple of articles that it was highly suspicious why we went in, since immediately after this supposedly spontaneous rebellion happened, the rebels set up their own central bank. And several commentators wrote and said that this was very strange, that they'd never seen ragtag rebels in the desert setting up a central bank before. So that there were obviously some sophisticated players involved. And then there was the fact that they had all kinds of equipment, too, that they got from somewhere. But this was all just kind of speculation. But what I wrote about then was the fact that Libya had its own central bank. It was not part of the central banking system. It wasn't part of the Bank for International Settlements. They were issuing their own money and funding their own projects. The most impressive of which was this what's called the Great Man-Made River Project, the largest irrigation system in the world. Which we bombed, by the way, as I understand it, during the air campaign. We did, and it was civilian infrastructure, and it was feeding bringing water to 70% of the population. So it's actually a war crime to bomb that. And they didn't just bomb the pipes; they actually then also bombed the factory where they make the pipes to make sure that it couldn't be repaired. So it was not an accident. Anyway, so I had written about that at the time, and that's why I was interested when I saw these. In Hillary's emails, it confirmed, first of all, that the things that we were accusing Gaddafi of, the reason for going in there was mere rumor. There was no evidence of it. I mean, that was also said at the time by humanitarian organizations, that they couldn't find any evidence of these mass murders and mass rapes and so forth. Supposedly, Gaddafi had ordered his military to rape and murder his own people. But
a significant portion of his military were women, so I'd like to know how you pull that one off.
Yes. Amazons. So in one or more than one, I guess, of these emails, a third of the emails that were released last December were from. There were 3,000 emails, and a third of them were from Sidney Blumenthal, their confidant, the Clinton confidant and good friend, who. So in these emails, he confirmed. He said that these were just rumors. These alleged atrocities, and that they came from the rebels, so you couldn't really trust them, obviously. And there was some suspicion that they came actually from Sidney Blumenthal. But what was more interesting to me, particularly interesting, was that another email from Sidney Blumenthal in which he told the reason that Sarkozy, the French president, had joined the campaign when he had found out that Gaddafi was organizing these 53 African countries into an African union that would issue their own money, their own gold dinar. Gaddafi was already issuing gold dinar, and anybody who traded with Libya had to use the Libyan money, the gold dinar, rather than their own currency, including the French franc. So he was organizing this whole monetary union, or African Union, like a United States of Africa, where they would use their own currency. They would be economically independent, break free of the West, and he was going to show these other countries how to do an irrigation system like his, so they would have their own food, their own water, their own money, their own central banks, and they would be. And if anybody wanted to trade with them, they'd have to use their currencies on their terms rather than borrowing from the IMF, which is how they've all gotten into debt and gotten to be sort of debt slaves of the West. So they were breaking out of the system, and France wanted to maintain their neo-colonial control. And Sarkozy had actually called Gaddafi a threat to the financial security of the world, which you have to wonder why, even if he was doing atrocities on his own people, why that would threaten the financial security of the world. It obviously had to do with finances. And so that's the reason why they revealed in these emails. So that confirmed what we all were suspecting earlier. And it plays into you say what I usually write about. It was a public bank. They had their own central bank owned by the government, which had its own money, issued its own money, issued its own credit, funded this $33 billion irrigation system just through issuing its own credit and backing it with its own. They had 143 tons of gold, which then disappeared. So you can guess where it probably went, but nobody's admitting it. Or $7 billion worth of gold. So they funded a $33 billion project with $7 billion worth of gold. So clearly they're issuing credit, issuing money like all banks do. So it is actually the sort of banking model that I keep talking about that we all could do. We all could have financial economic independence. That I think the European countries, Greece, for instance, could do it, issue their own money. The U.S. should have government issued money and a central bank that's actually owned and controlled by the government, not one that's controlled by the banks.
By the private banker. So thank you very much. Now I see quite clearly how this story ties into your usual stories. You're right. Yeah, you're always talking about the virtues of having your own central bank, beholden to the government rather than to private bankers. And yes, the gold of Libya disappeared, much the same way as I'm told a bunch of gold under the World Trade Center disappeared on 9/11/2001, mysteriously.
There are lots of mysteries.
You know about that story?
Yeah. I've heard. I mean, I don't know where it went to.
Yeah. They had a whole bunch of gold under the World Trade Center, and that went missing. And there was a photographer, a FEMA photographer, who took some pictures of it, and he's scared for his life. He's down in Argentina now. And then, of course, the gold of Germany is somewhere, not in the Federal Reserve Vault. Right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's just I can't believe how far this whole thing goes. Well, we're going to be coming up on break shortly too, and maybe you can give us a couple of specifics about these Sidney Blumenthal, Hillary Clinton emails. But also, like I said, Ellen, I did some reading, and I can't. Sometimes you go through so many things and then you can't find the article. But they were talking about helicopter money in Europe, and they didn't quite call it that. They had some canard that they were going to try. So maybe we could talk about that too. What do you think?
Sure, and I even know the article, but I haven't read it. But I'll read it right now.
Oh, well, you don't have to, but I thought I was looking for it because I want to send it to you.
I know they're doing various things that are like helicopter money. Okay.
Very good. All right, friends, we're talking with Ellen Brown. Ellen, I got a couple of seconds to kill here, so I'm gonna do some shtick. Every time I think about you coming on the show, I think about Les Brown and his band of renown. You need a band. Are you related to Les Brown?
No.
All right, good friends. That's our good friend Ellen Brown. We'll be right back with her just after this. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio, every Tuesday and Thursday night here on the great Logos Radio Network. Right back with Ellen just after this.
Easy.
All right, good friends. Welcome back. We're speaking with Ellen Brown, webofdebt.com. Ellen, you've got several websites people can go to. Let's get that back up on the table again before we continue.
Okay. webofdebt.wordpress.com is the same as ellenbrown.com. Webofdebt.com is a bit old, but anyway, it's there too. And publicbankinginstitute.org, but I have to say that in talking about anything that seems to be related to elections, I'm only speaking for myself and not for an institution.
Right. And we got to make this clear, because nowadays everything's foundation funded and the oligarchs get upset when we talk about what they're doing, and they threaten to pull their money.
Endorse any candidates, and I suppose that means you can't unendorse them either, or that is to say rude things about them.
Well, we're not talking disparagingly about Hillary Clinton. We're just talking about the truth. It's like Harry Truman, when they used to say, give him hell, Harry. And he said, I don't give him hell. I give him the truth and they think it's hell.
Right. Yeah. No, that's the reason it interested me was the whole thing about Libya. I mean, just that what they had done or what they were threatening to do, which was set up a banking system like I think every country should have. So it's really what I write about all the time.
You know, they said that Dominique Strauss-Kahn was trying to work with him or something. Was another reason why they got him out of the way. Did you know anything about that?
Oh, he's trying to work with Libya?
Yes, he was discussing, how to work with that, and then they took him down too.
Interesting.
He wasn't being like tough enough on the Libyans or something, and then the next thing you know, he's in very questionable circumstances here in New York. So, Ellen, I also wanted to talk with you because you know a lot about this whole concept of helicopter money, central banking, and the rest of it, and I came across an article. Apparently, you saw it too, and I'd like you to talk with us about it. It's like the nuclear option. You know, are we really getting to? Is that a possible solution? Helicopter money versus, say, a Jubilee, where you could write debt off, which I think would be great, or is it not something that would be helpful?
Yes, I think helicopter money is the answer. Of course, it has to be directed in the right place. The trouble with a Jubilee, writing off your debts, it depends on which debts we're talking about. I mean, the government should write off its debts. In other words, the central bank should buy up all the government's bonds and just hang on to them or rip them up and don't count it as debt. And it would not be inflationary because that money is already out there. It just, all it is this big debt burden that hangs over our heads like we're always supposed to pay it back, but we never do. What we pay is the interest. So what we want to get rid of is that interest, which is like a third of our income taxes go to interest on the federal debt, which is totally unnecessary. We could fund it through our own central bank, interest-free, and we should. But if you're talking about tearing up the debt, private debts, there's a creditor on the other side of all that debt. So you'd be tearing up the bonds of little old ladies, and you'd be hurting the people who are lending the money. Now, arguably, that includes big banks that we don't necessarily mind hurting, but you would have to change the rules of the game and say that it's okay for banks to not balance their books, or we're going to allow the bank to write this off too, so they don't go bankrupt because. So that's a trickier issue. But a helicopter drop is just putting money out there, fresh money out there. It sounds like quantitative easing, but the difference is that with regular quantitative easing, the money only goes to the banks. And then the idea is to stimulate the banks to lend more money. But they can't lend if they don't have borrowers, and the borrowers are all borrowed up. They don't want to borrow more, or if they do, they don't qualify anymore for loans. And businesses are afraid to borrow because, they don't have customers, so why would they want to expand? So you've got to get the money into people's pockets. The customers need more money to spend, and that's what's going to stimulate the economy. So how do you get the money out there? One possibility is quantitative easing for the people, or what's been called that. Jeremy Corbyn has called it that in England, although what he's talking about is put the money into infrastructure. So you pay it directly to the government to do productive things that actually go out into the real economy, instead of paying it to the banks and hoping it finds its way to the government as loans. But this would be a direct payment, or you still could buy government bonds, but acknowledge that you're never going to collect on those bonds. So you don't have to worry about the debt ceiling. Let the debt go up that amount that's held by the central bank, because the central bank is you. So really it's just a ruse for saying you're printing money. And the reason it wouldn't be inflationary is that there is not enough money currently in the economy to pay off the debts that we have. The GDP, which is all the products we produce, is substantially higher than the money that people get paid, including wages, dividends. Everything that people get paid is less than our GDP. So we don't have enough money to buy our own products. So you've got to get more money out there just to make supply and demand be equal, which means you keep the prices level. And if you put extra money out there, and if you make sure that money goes into products or services, then GDP will go up at the same time that the money goes up, and so prices will still remain stable. What causes prices to go up is when you have too much money chasing too few goods. But if the goods go up along with the money, prices remain stable.
Ellen, it's funny that you said that, because I've always had a picture like that in my mind. Isn't it evidence on its face that if the government has to constantly so-called borrow money, isn't that on its face evidence that there's just not enough money in the system? Otherwise, it wouldn't have to borrow it, right? Otherwise, we could just pay it in taxes, right? If we all had enough money and we all contributed, I mean, it seems to me that there's new stuff that happens every day that needs to be monetized. You need to be making new money all the time, no?
Right, and there's new stuff that we could be doing, but we don't have the money. Like, if the government has extra money, imagine if you had a government that was directed to, you said, we're going to give you the money, but you've got to put it into research and development, developing, like, alternative energy systems that will, that are clean, ways to clean the ocean, ways to grow agriculture more efficiently, permaculture, that sort of thing. There's lots of inventions out there, but the people that are inventing this stuff, and a lot of alternative medical therapies that get suppressed because they don't make money. But if you put money into developing those things, then you could make things cheaper and, make things better for everybody and give people some leisure time for a change. That's what we were told in the 50s. I was just a kid in the 50s.
No, we were told that. I was a kid too, and I remember there was such. We were so taken with our ability to come off the ground from laying flat on our back in the Great Depression into an instant charge into World War II with all these factories and thousands of aircraft that were designed, built, and shipped out within a year, off the drawing board, and tanks and ships, and from nothing. We were so enthralled with ourselves that, the sky was going to be the limit after World War II. If we could do this under wartime circumstances, surely with all our brains and all our energy and all our know-how, in peacetime, we're going to do things so great. What are people going to do with all their leisure time that they're going to be coming onto?
Mm-hmm. But the problem was that Roosevelt was he taxing the rich something like 90-something%.
The tax rate under Roosevelt and Truman and into the early years of the Eisenhower administration was 90%, the highest tax rate. And he threatened the oligarchs that he should be charging them 100% because their kids weren't dying in World War II like everybody else's. And if we lost that war, they'd be losing everything anyway. So he actually threatened 100% tax on them.
Yeah, so they didn't like this whole system, and they wanted to get rid of it, and they did, and they privatized everything, which was far less efficient than the way it was or the way it was going. So, but we do have the potential to have all these things and to have leisure time. And the reason we don't have them is not the lack of materials, it's not the lack of labor, it's the lack of money. But what is money but the grease that gets the labor and materials together? So if it's created by the government specifically to acknowledge that you've done labor for the people, you've contributed products for the collective good. Therefore, we're going to pay you with these little paper receipts. That's what they are. They're things that acknowledge that we owe you, and you can go out and spend them on something else that you want.
You gave us our labor. You gave us your labor to build that bridge, and you gave us your raw materials in the form of materials to build that bridge. And in exchange for that, here's this receipt that has to be honored anywhere, and you go ahead and get whatever you want with that now. And the people have a bridge now. So instead of taking an hour and a half to get home on a Friday night, now it's only going to take you maybe 45 minutes or something,
Mm-hmm. That's actually what Roosevelt did. He rebuilt the entire country when we were flat broke. How did he do it? They created money, they recycled money, but they did it through the Reconstruction Finance Corporation because they couldn't get the Fed to do it. So they set up their own publicly owned financing mechanism, the biggest banking institution ever and the most productive and the most successful. And after, I think it was in the 50s when it was closed down under Eisenhower, they had rebuilt the entire country and they'd actually turned a profit for the government. So how did they do that when they started with nothing? It was just recycling what they had. It's just a way of, it's just liquidity to get the money into the hands of the people for doing the work and putting out the materials.
And that's not to mention, like I said before, all of these incredible products. When these demagogues talk about, you can't create, it's waste, you're wasting money. There's nothing more wasteful than a whole fleet of bombers that you're going to use, the ones that don't get shot down and crash. The war's over in a year and a half, and then you throw them out anyway. Talk about waste. But anyhow, we're speaking with Ellen Brown. We've got one more segment with her. We're going to come back and talk with her about that sort of thing on the other side of the break. We got the top of the hour break, got a little news break here. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio with Ellen Brown. We'll be right back with it just after this. right, good friends. Welcome back. Ellen Brown. What is it? EllenBrown.wordpress.org? Or
No, EllenBrown.com.
EllenBrown.com is the quick way to go. And Ellen's writings are great. And you could subscribe if you like, and then you'll get them sent to you. And it's just always a pleasure because, Ellen, it is the root of all evil, money, and when it's not being handled properly anyhow. And I find that so many people want to protest this and protest that. But if you don't deal with the central banking system, you might as well forget it, because this is where all the trouble is, if you ask me. And it's so, we are the full faith and credit of the U.S. government army. That's us, right?
Right. It's backed by us. Exactly. And why is it that we don't generate our own money? It should be generated by the people, for the people. The profit should go back to the people. And that's what a public banking system is. Yeah. The bankers usually say that the politicians would succumb to political pressure, and they would make too much money and they would spend it foolishly to be reelected and all. What do you say about that part of it? Well, would you rather have elected officials that you can fire, handling, issuing the money and deciding where it goes, or would you rather have private bankers who have actually a legal obligation to serve their owners and not the people?
And you don't even really know who they are, do you? Do we really know all the owners of the Federal Reserve Bank?
Well, technically we do. I mean, there are 12 branches of the Federal Reserve, all of which are 100% owned by the banks in their district. So you can tell which bank owns what, but you can't tell who owns the banks necessarily.
Right, and is there any possibility that foreigners own part of this system, our Federal Reserve banking system, our central banking system?
Well, they could definitely own banks that own the system. Yeah. Yeah,
that's what I mean. And usually, you've got banks inside of banks inside of banks and all too. It's a shell game, isn't it?
Yeah, they have interlocking directorates. They all. Yeah. I think it's one big system, really. I mean, the way they play it now, it's one big system. The reason they have the liquidity if you ever ask yourself, how is it they make all these 30-year loans, and yet every time I go ask for my money, they've got it so far. So how do they make these 30-year loans with our deposits, and then we can get the deposits back whenever we want? The way they do it is, after they made the loan and the money migrated into some other bank, they borrow it back for almost nothing, because they're all one big system. So you can always borrow it overnight, and then you get it. So you borrow it overnight, you give it back during the day, so now it belongs to the other bank. These are called repos, sale and repossession. And then you borrow it again the next night, and then you give it back. So you keep doing that over and over. I mean, it's a huge shell game, and it's legal. We let them get away with that. Although I'm not actually opposed to banks creating the credit that we call money if we own the bank, because then, it is a good way it's kind of like a big community currency where money only comes into existence when somebody wants to do something for someone else. In a community currency system, there's no money. You the people, create the money whenever you have a deal with someone else. Like, you pay a certain amount of credits, and they get paid those credits, and then you pay off your obligation to someone else by getting their credits. So that's really what the banking system is. We, the borrowers, actually create the money, which is fine, but we should also get the interest, we collectively, and we should have control over where the money goes and what the deal is, what the interest rates are. The way it is now, the banks can lend to each other or to themselves for very cheaply, and then do leverage buyouts, buy up companies and exploit them and sell off the shelves. And they can do that with very cheap money, but we can't get that kind of cheap money. They can charge us what the market will bear.
Now, Ellen, isn't it also the case that the model that we've all been raised with, and apparently a good many economists as well, isn't really how it works? We've all been raised to think that, Ma and Pa Kettle's life savings are at the bank loads it out to a young couple who wants to buy a house, and they pay interest, and then Ma and Pa Kettle get some of that interest. But yet at the same time, we see all these articles, Americans aren't saving, savings have hit a rock bottom. How can you reconcile that? How much, is there a figure out there of what percentages of loans are actually backed by people's savings?
Well, it is all very mysterious how it's done. Supposedly the banks have lots of excess reserves, but I just heard from someone who used to work for the U.S. Treasury that the banks now that we have the system we have, no gold backing, et cetera, they can create all the money that they want, and they do. I mean, you have to have a borrower, of course, but they can borrow it themselves or lend it to their cronies who borrow it and create these huge amounts of money. And the way they get away with it is with these repos, these overnight deals where they borrow it back overnight, which is when you have to balance your books, and then they give it back during the day. It goes back and forth.
Yeah, I actually, believe it or not, I wrote some. I used to write software for the repo market, and also, there was an interbank market that they were trying to create to do just that. Where they could exchange these instruments back and forth, because they also don't show up on your books. Did you know that? When you buy a security in the old days, they'd have to walk the paper across Wall Street or whatever. So there used to be like a 24-hour grace period. So if you and I both had similar stocks, that we bought, and we didn't want to show them as a liability. You could sell me yours and I could sell you mine, and then it's off the books. And then the next day we could sell them back to each other. And if we kept going back and forth, it would be a liability that never showed up. Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. And it's the same that's how banks create money too. That let's say you, the bank, create a $500,000 mortgage. The money goes to the seller and he puts it in another bank. But meanwhile, that bank creates another $500,000 mortgage, and the seller puts the check into your bank. So you both get $500,000 out, $500,000 in, your books balance, everything's cool. But there's $1 million out there that wasn't there before. That's how they create money.
It's a pretty amazing system. Now, in a public banking system, you don't get rid of private banking, right? I mean, in that system, you don't have regular people coming to the government every time they need a loan for a car or something, right? Wouldn't it be sort of like a two-tiered system where you had the government would distribute money through projects and so forth, and banking for other government institutions?
Yeah, well, there are different ways you could do it. There are different models. The Germans have one model. The Sparkasse model, which is local. They're local publicly owned banks, and they do make direct loans to individuals. But the Bank of North Dakota model, they are basically a banker's bank. So the loans to individuals are it's the local bank that deals with the customers, checks out creditworthiness, et cetera, takes their deposits. And then the Bank of North Dakota comes in and helps with they buy down the loan, or they participate in the loan. So they might put up 90% of the money, and then they guarantee the loan, so the local bank doesn't have to worry about capital. The guarantee replaces the capital requirement. So the local bank can make much bigger loans than they could otherwise. Like they could do, there might be some local project that something that needs to be built, and the local bank would be too small to fund it itself. But if they can get this extra liquidity from the Bank of North Dakota, then they can do it, and everybody goes away happy. So the local banks are like the front office.
Now, another point that I find interesting, since we so foolishly allowed the banksters to write the Federal Reserve Act, and then they snuck it in, and we gave away our constitutionally guaranteed right to create money to these bankers, since that situation has occurred, when the government needs money, it doesn't want to tax people because they get angry, especially the rich people, so it has to borrow money, which it really doesn't need to do because it could have just made it itself. And so correct me if I'm wrong about this, but it's my understanding that the way this scam works is the government needs to borrow money, alerts the Fed says, fine, we're going to sell bonds, and then the Fed tells its member banks, hey, the government needs money, and so we're going to float some bonds. So here, hold on a second. And then the Fed generates money, which it then loans to the banks at a very low interest rate. And then when the bonds come, the banks use that freshly minted money from the Fed to buy the government bonds at a higher rate. Is that, am I far off with that?
That's a bit mysterious. I mean, you could be right on. I'm not sure. I mean, the way I understood it was that there are like 20 or 22 banks that are authorized to sell the government's bonds, and they do buy them first, but they buy them on credit, essentially. So they're buying them with fake money. You know what I mean? They just advance the money. So
right. It's not like
the central bank, the Federal Reserve. Yeah.
Some savers buy bonds, but isn't the majority of it, these banking institutions that get the money for free from nowhere and then loan it to us as if it was real money and we have to pay it back at interest?
Yeah, well, the bonds are sold. A lot of the bonds are sold to other banks, but there's only those 20 or so banks that are authorized to actually deal with the government, to sell the bonds directly, and then other banks buy them from them, and they use it as a way to, it's a form of investment, easier than making a loan. Like the money that they haven't lent out, they use to buy government bonds, which are very liquid, so they can sell them if they need to for their deposit, to cash out their depositors.
And just about more secure than anything else, thanks to you and I. I don't know. Yeah, it's an arcane system that I marvel at how far it's been able to go. But anyway, Ellen, you've gone a far way in helping us to clear up certain things, and you always do. EllenBrown.com, everybody. And Ellen, is there a way people can sign up to get your articles sent to them when they go there?
Yeah, there's a link or a place there to sign up for articles. And my books are on Amazon. Web of Debt and The Public Bank Solution are my 2 books on this subject, and 10 other books on another subject.
Well, thank you very much. And, I got people asking me to send the links to your interviews and stuff, and overseas even, so thank you so much, Ellen, for doing what you're doing and for coming on the show so often.
Likewise, and thank you for what you do.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
All right, good friends. Some great 80s music there. We could talk about music if you like. Open phones now for the rest of the program. And that was the wonderful Ellen Brown. She comes on the show a good deal. And it's always, I just can't help it. She comes out with these great articles. And listen, this is the kind of thing that can happen when we take control of technology and dedicated people all work together to produce alternative media. That's what we're doing. That's what I've been doing since 2001 when we formed INN World Report. That's what our wonderful producer Deborah Stevens does when she works so hard to carry this network to you. And we could use a little help. So please go to the Logos Radio Network website. It's called logosradionetwork.com. And, throw a little something in the tip cup there, please. Because the irony is, through the alternative media, you are getting the truth. You're getting, and look, the corrupt corporate mainstream oligarchies propaganda ministry called the mainstream media, you're getting some truth through that too. You'd have to, because if it was all just plain lies, then everybody would just laugh at it, which is what they should be doing. But the important stuff, you don't get there. Crimes of omission. And, the way things really work, you don't get there. But that's what you get here. And the irony is, now, you've been listening to me for a long time. I've got the gift of gab, right? I've got some intellectual curiosity. If I applied myself to serve the oligarchy rather than to expose it, I could be rolling in it, right? They'd pay me a lot of money because I could be persuasive. What do you think Sean Hannity makes? Or Rush Limbaugh, people like that. Or Rachel Maddow. Or any of them people. They make a lot of money. And they're worth a lot of money because they can tell you stuff that's bogus with a straight face. Not everything they say is bogus, but you know what? How about this? If you're wondering what does Tom mean here? Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Who sold that to us? Who sold that to us? Don't tell me the alternative media gets it wrong. But to my knowledge, there hasn't been anybody who ever died based on my program. Not to mention 1 million Iraqis. How can these people live with themselves? How can they sleep at night? Anyhow, the irony is, if we were selling the lies, we would be rolling in it. We wouldn't have to ask you for anything. And as a matter of fact, corporate America would be throwing money at us. All right? Which they're not. So, if you can find it within your heart, hopefully the economy's getting a little better here and there. Anything. Go over to logosradionetwork.com and take a look and put some money in there. We need servers. We need microphones. We need to pay internet bills and things like that. So hopefully you can help out. It makes no difference because I've never made a penny off of alternative media. Now working in it for about 15 years. Never made a dime. In fact, I've put a lot of my own money into it. Hundreds of thousands of dollars I put into the alternative media, creating alternative media over the years. If I could have just gotten enough to, I never once took a salary. The money I put in was to buy cameras and pay for satellite time and all that stuff. So if everybody had chipped in, I'd probably have myself a nice house that I could live in. But that's okay. I don't mind because it's the truth, and no question about it. Virtue is its own reward. I sleep quite well at night, and I really love this show. I look forward to it, and it really keeps me going. So anyhow, take a look over there, LogosRadioNetwork.com, and hopefully you can shoot a couple of bucks that way. Meanwhile, phone lines are open. Robert was on the line right before Ellen came on, and he called at the end of the segment. I couldn't bring him on. So Robert, if you're still listening, I'd love to have you call back, and anybody else. How am I doing? I'm sorry, I'm not talking very much about the Brussels attack because it's just another one, and there'll be more, and I'm sure there's all kind of shady, questionable things. Let me guess, the attackers are all dead. I try to look into it, and you know what? I go on. Where are you going to go to find this stuff out? You go to Google News, and where do you go? They want CNN wants to tell you about it, or ABC wants to tell you about it. Come on. Like I was trying to say before, it's the horns of a dilemma. Either we've really upset a lot of people, which I can totally understand if that's what has happened, and they're trying to stop us and saying enough is enough, and they're striking back over here, or even worse than that, these are bloodthirsty mercenaries that we hired to go into Syria, and we're hiring them, we're paying them to go shake it up over here too, so that, make the population feel insecure, make the population beg the government for more protection, which means less freedom. That's the way it works. We went into Syria, and it was a big lie. Oh, the Assad family is killing thousands of their own people. We got, and there's people they don't want to live under Assad, and they want a revolution. We got to help them. That's the Free Syrian Army. Okay. Well, it's all hype. It wasn't supposed to last this long. It should have been over by now because they wanted to pull a Libya on Syria and start the no-fly zone. The minute you hear them say no-fly zone, that's it. They're going to bomb people. They're going to bomb civilian infrastructure. We just talked about that with Ellen Brown. And, they funded this opposition over there, and it fizzled out. It didn't do anything because there's not that much opposition. All right? There's opposition in every country. The Tea Party over here doesn't like the government. Right? How would you feel if the Russians or the Chinese or the Iranians came over here and made a deal with the Tea Party? Hey, come here. Here's a couple $100 million, right? And, who's your best people? We'll train them. We can set camps up out in the woods. Nobody will know where it is. Or, you know what? Better yet, we'll take you to Russia and train you on how to kill people, how to blow stuff up. And then we'll send you back to the United States. Because you got a legitimate beef, right? The government's corrupt, right? Well, that's exactly what we did in Syria. Exactly what we did in Syria. How would you like it if somebody did that to us over here and stuff starts blowing up over here and people start shooting and a civil war breaks out over here? That's what we do. That's what we've done. Except the people in Syria, there wasn't enough of them that were that dissatisfied. So they had to bring in mercenaries, and that's your ISIS right there. They had to get crazy fighters from around the world, Chechnya, even from Europe, from the United States, some of them, Jihad John and all that kind of stuff. And they're paying them. And the Saudis are paying. And the Turks are paying. And we're sending money in and it's being laundered through them too. That's what it's all about. And then, so now we have this stuff blown up. How do we know, are the mercenaries who are ISIS that we've been paying all along? And we've been doing it because they've been operating for 3-4 years now, 5 years now? In the desert? With no clouds in the sky, in a desert, with no trees to hide under, in a desert. A bunch of sand, really hot. Clear sky, not a cloud in the sky, not a drop of rain. And a road, a strip of blacktop. That's ISIS. And they've been driving their oil tankers up and down these roads and unmolested. Are you kidding me? Come on. You got to be kidding me. No. And then when they pressed the United States about this, well, if ISIS is so bad, why haven't you lifted a finger against them? And you know what they come up with? How about this one? You ready? I hope you're sitting down. Oh, well, we do not want to create the environmental degradation that would happen if we blew up a bunch of oil tankers on a road in a desert over there. Really? So ISIS has made millions of dollars, funded them. We're facilitating it. Come on. Give me a break. You know, if you believe Hollywood, all you need to do is get a few SEALs to stop the first truck. What are they going to do? Drive through the sand after that? Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio. What do you think? 512-646-1984. We didn't even start talking about Trump yet. You know, Roger Stone will be back on the show Thursday night in 2 nights. I want you all to be listening. We'll be right back right after this.
Do you sleep with your cell phone? If the answer is yes, you might be among a growing number of folks who suffer from nomophobia. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll tell you about people's growing fear of being disconnected next.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Do you take your cell phone into the bathroom or panic if it's not in arm's reach? Do you keep an extra phone on hand just in case your main phone stops working? If you do any of these things, you may have nomophobia or no mobile phobia, the fear of being caught without your cell phone. And you wouldn't be alone. A recent survey finds 2/3 of us feel afraid without our cell phones. That's a huge increase over just 4 years ago. And the problem is even worse among young people, where nearly 8 out of 10 people under 24 feel anxious when they're unplugged. How could a technology that's supposed to simplify our lives have become such a burden? I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
.com.
Live Free Speech Radio, LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Something's wrong. Man, I swear something's wrong. Something's wrong. I don't think I'll be around here long.
All right, good friends, welcome back. Tom Kiley, INN World Report Radio. Everyone who hears. How's that? Hopefully enjoys it. And it's here on the Great Logos Radio Network on Tuesday and Thursday nights. Phone lines are going to be open now for the rest of the show. 512-646-1984. I believe we have a caller being screened right now, but you could be right there. If not the next caller, you could be the next caller after the next caller. So somebody's going to be on the line, I hope, in just a minute. And whatever, we could talk about whatever. I'm getting static from people. Some people from overseas that listen to the show, because I am interested in the candidacy of Donald Trump. And everybody claims that this guy is a phony, and they claim he's a fascist and all the rest of it. Now, as you probably know, one of his rallies got shut down about, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago in Chicago. And there was a little bit of violence. People were throwing some punches and stuff. But a crew of disruptors went and were successful and disrupted the meeting, so he called it off. And he got the blame for this, right? And they had Bernie Sanders signs. I don't even think they were Bernie Sanders people. I think they were probably Hillary Clinton. They were definitely from George Soros, though. But he gets the blame. He's the fascist. Now, they call him, he's got brown shirts. Brown shirts was with the Nazi Party's special Abteilung, I think it was the SA. It was a group of thugs that went to break up other people's rallies and crack heads. And he's getting blamed for this. He's got no brown shirts. Nobody's going to other people's rallies, Hillary Clinton's rallies, and breaking them up. They're all going to his rallies. And yet they're blaming him for this. It's crazy. Anyhow, Chris is on the line, so we're going to go to Chris. And you could be next, 512-646-1984. Hi, Chris. Are you there?
Yes, Tom. Thanks.
Thanks for calling. What would you like to talk about?
I'm really excited that both Trump and Bernie Sanders are doing so well right now. And I think they're going to do well tonight. And I'm kind of like Jesse Ventura. I want him to shake up this thing really big, and then let's see where we go from there.
Well, I'm with you, brother, because a Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump election would be just fine with me. And I would be happy with either of them because, to your point, they're shaking things up, and things obviously need to be shaken up. And so I'm good with it. I think Trump would be a lot better on Israel, and he's definitely a lot better than all the rest of them put together on foreign interventionism. But even Bernie Sanders would be better, I think. So have you been following either of these campaigns much?
Yeah, both of them. Yeah, very much, yes.
Well, did you ever dream that you'd be hearing the stuff that you're hearing? Did you ever dream you would hear a candidate from the Republican Party on stage on national TV saying the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq was a lie? And George Bush knew it was a lie. Did you ever dream in your wildest dreams you'd hear stuff like that?
No, and the fact that he's also said, let's focus on America and let's rebuild our bridges and our infrastructure, and let's secure our borders no matter what happens over in, what is that, Brussels or something over there. Right. No, I'm real excited about where he's coming from, and I think Bernie is smart and he's learning. They're all watching all this. And I don't know. He's supposedly an independent, so yeah, I'm still giving him a lot of. I've given money. Trump doesn't want my money, but I'm supporting him. And I was a Rand Paul supporter, and now I'm a Trump supporter in the Republicans. But for the Democrats, I'm a Bernie supporter.
Well, I don't know if you've heard me say this on the show or not, Chris. I have never voted Republican in my life, probably for anything. And I could have voted for Reagan. My first election was with Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter and John Anderson, and I voted independent in that one with John Anderson. So I've been voting since before Ronald Reagan ran for president, and I am not a Reagan Democrat, nor would I have ever have been one. I couldn't stand them. I think they were slitting their own throats. However, if the election were held tomorrow and it was Hillary and I don't even know who it could be, Bernie and Trump would be a toss-up. I'd like to, wait to see how those debates went, maybe. But certainly, if Hillary and Trump was running, I'd vote Republican, no problem. And I tell this to people. I'm online at the airport in Denver on my way back, and people were complaining and everything. And I'm saying, this is what, it wasn't always this way in this country, and Donald Trump wants to change it. And I even wrote, there was one club I was at in Denver that had or actually it was in Boulder, and they had a blackboard in the bathroom with a big piece of chalk. You could write stuff. I wrote Dems for Trump. How about that?
Yeah, I'm from Texas, and I'm a Ron Paul supporter for whoever I want to be supporting.
But you see, Chris, that's what's got them so scared. And I'm told Hillary is shaking in her pumps about this. That Trump is drawn from everywhere. He's drawing Democrats. He's drawing libertarians, and it's shaking them up. The Republicans are pulling 50 to 100, 150 in some cases, more people in the primaries now than they have in the last few. And the Democrats are down by about 30% in the primaries. That's not a good sign.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you about that. Yes. So I'm with you. Sounds like we're all pushing the same couple of candidates right now. So let's go with that for right now.
But Chris, you know why? It's because you're voting the person, not the party. And that's what we all should be doing. Number one. Number two, if I could ask you one more question before you go, how do you answer the fact that they try to say, oh, Trump has never run a public office before. He doesn't have the experience. Does that deter you in any way?
Oh, absolutely the opposite. The fact that he's been a self-employed businessman, no, that's a huge positive for me. The fact that he has, I'm sure he's gotten government contracts here and there and all that stuff, but he's played the game like a smart man. No, I think he's way better than any of those people that have had government jobs for a long time.
Excellent. Well, listen, call back. Have you called in the show before, Chris?
Yeah, one time, long time.
It was a while ago.
Well, a few weeks ago, yeah. I used to work for the U.S. State Department back in the early.
Okay, that's right. Now, I've been telling so many people about you and your call. So send me an email if you'd like, info@INN Radio. I'd like to be in better touch with you. I'm so honored that you serve the country and in that capacity, and you like to listen to this show. And as you said that last time, it helps you, the show. So how about that?
Yeah, and everybody should donate to the network.
Well, thank you for your service. Thanks for listening. Thanks for calling in. And send me an email if you'd like. Info@INNradio.com. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, Chris, former State Department employee, he called in. He did call in a few weeks ago and likes listening to the show. Now Robert's on the line. You could be next, 512-646-1984. Robert, are you the same Robert that called in earlier this evening?
Yes.
I apologize for not being able to take your call, but we can talk as long as you'd like. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Tom?
Handy and damn nice, as Grandma used to say.
Yeah, I kind of missed you today because I was calling in earlier.
Well, you know what? Here we go again. The segment is over. That's what that music means. But we got a whole nother segment right after that. So please, I'm asking you to hold on one more time, and we'll be right back right after this break with Robert. And you can call too, 512-646-1984.
Easy.
Friends, I'm going to get right to it. Robert's on the line, and then we got Rob, and then John called too, so we'll get to it. And thank you all so much. And don't forget, on Thursday night, 2 nights from now, Roger Stone, that's going to be really good. He has not been on the show since November, so we're going to catch up on an awful lot of Donald Trump with Roger Stone on Thursday night, so please tune in. Okay, back to Robert. All right, sir, here we go, Robert. Thank you very much. What would you like to talk about?
Oh, I just wanted to mention something about how an oligarchy runs our country, basically. And there was an interesting Huffington Post article. I'm not sure if it was yesterday or today, but the former Surgeon General, Richard Carmona, he basically gives a testimonial about how much money goes into the campaigning process, and how it's basically you are in debt to corporations and lobbyists, and it kind of solidified in my mind how our government isn't really representative.
Well, it's who pays the piper, that's for sure, and they have to spend so much time collecting that money, and that's why they don't like Donald Trump, because he doesn't need their money, and at least not so far, and that's just got them all. It's almost like they're screaming, "Hey, not fair," like that. And also another aspect of the oligarchy is, we tend to think of all this new technology as being really fun stuff and cool and all that. But there's a whole new level of it coming up with, the high tech industry. Julian Assange, I'm not a big fan of, but he's got a new book coming out, and he published a chapter or part of it, and talking about how Google came to him. And how fascinating the Google people are all out of the State Department, and they're doing these all kind of crazy stuff, nasty, nasty political stuff. And this is supposed to be Google that everybody likes. So the oligarchy is really getting into our lives, with the search engines and everything else too.
There's this whole PR campaign, especially with sort of invasive technology like Google, or they try to market themselves as almost. It's almost like an artificial liberal. They present themselves as having a wonderful corporate culture and the fuzzy socks and all this stuff. And but really, it seems like I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of their beginnings started with DARPA and.
Well, it has, and that's what Julian Assange goes into. How they've worked so closely together with the NSA and DARPA and so forth, and they've consulted with each other, and they've gotten contracts and everything else. So that would be interesting. And you're right. It's not just Google. All this nice, warm, touchy-feely, really cool technology stuff. I'm sure you've heard of Uber, right?
Yeah, Uber, yeah.
Yeah, well, they're destroying the livery business and the taxi cab business. And, because
delegitimizing unions, in my opinion, because I know that there were several worker protections for taxi drivers, and with Uber and ride-sharing companies, it seems almost like a neoliberal thing where it's a race to the bottom. You're trying to get the cheapest amount of labor as possible, and there's zero protection for the.
Absolutely. And I drove a taxi in New York City for 2 years. I know it's hard work. It's hard work. It's dirty. You're breathing fumes all day and everything else. And they're killing the drivers. The drivers have to drive all night. Uber makes out The passengers make out sometimes, but when it rains, or if they take you to they got to pick you up at a football game where there's a lot of traffic, the rates go through the roof, right? So you know what happens? When the weather's good, people use Uber. When the weather's bad and Uber's rates are really high, they use the taxi cabs, and the taxi cabs get stuck in the rain, in the traffic, and they don't have any handicap accommodations like other people are forced to pay for and all, and they're laughing about it, about what a great idea they had just to put taxi rides in a database and put it on a smartphone, you know?
Yeah, it's very strange. I feel like there's been this repackaging, especially among the left, where at some point there was they gave in to corporations, and especially with Hillary, it's like with the speeches and stuff, and refusing to release them, and having this cop-out of everybody else has to release their transcripts.
Well, it goes back to her husband. When her husband ran, he was the new centrist Democratic Party. It took a Democrat to change welfare as we know it, you know, and they've been cozying up to the corporations ever since. So now they own both sides, you know.
Yeah, and he repealed Glass-Steagall.
That's right.
It's just...
How come nobody's asking Hillary that? Would you think that was a good idea your husband did, and would you reinstate it? That would be a great question to ask her, wouldn't it?
Well, Bernie basically had brought Glass-Steagall up in one of the debates, and she says, "Oh, Glass-Steagall didn't go far enough."
She meant when my husband threw it out the window, he didn't throw it far enough, I guess. Listen, Robert, thank you for the call. I got a couple other calls, so I want to move on. Do you mind?
Of course. It was nice to talk with you, Tom.
Thank you. Anytime. Please call in sooner. Okay, let's go now to Rob in Texas. Hi, Rob. Are you there?
Yeah. Hey, Tom.
Thanks for calling. Have you called in the show before, Rob?
Oh, I don't know. I've called into a couple 90.1 shows. So.
All right. Well, ding, ding, ding. First-time caller. What would you like to talk about?
Well, you know, Hillary's got her tens of millions from Wall Street. That's one thing. But and she's pretty much stealing the election on the Democratic side. And interestingly, you don't see a lot of people on the Bernie side crying out that, you know, the Louisiana primary, they were showing 0% for everyone, yet Hillary started off with 6 delegates. You know, it's like she gets a 6-delegate head start.
She's got the super delegates, yes. And they're designed to give the party control over the process.
Exactly. And then, but I really think the country does need a Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump debate. So the people that are crying, give us free this, give us free that, can actually see, you know, that they're wrong from an economic standpoint. Now, there's some social things that, you know, I think I heard Donald Trump today he said to Wolf Blitzer that he wanted to increase the police state and the NSA and go after these guys with torture, these terrorists. And I don't agree with that at all. I think, you know, that's a bum rap. But I think if you gave someone like that the ability to turn the economy around, I think a lot of other problems would solve themselves. And you let people solve their own problems, not the government. In the end. I
agree. You put them to work. You invest in infrastructure. That's a lot of jobs. You stop bleeding jobs to illegal immigrants. You know, I'm sorry. I would like to welcome everybody here, but there's no country on earth that does that. There's no country on earth that says everybody just come in. You know, they all have quotas and they scream. Maybe Canada, they need people up there. It's cold. And then also, you know, the gimme people, you know, I think people should be entitled to earn a living. There's plenty of work that needs to be done. The New York subways are falling down to garbage. It's terrible. There's plenty of work that needs to be done. People should be able to earn a living. Everyone can contribute. But if you're not going to let them do that, then what else do they have? But gimme. Right. You know what I mean?
Then they have a ghetto to go live in and you know, food stamps to get, and the government will take care of them. So I've noticed that you see a lot of Democrats being interviewed and, you know, what are they saying? They're saying, you know, they're worried about their check and how much it's going to increase. Incidentally enough, David Knight from over at InfoWars interviewed Webster Tarpley actually in D.C. Webster and his cohorts had a Hitler is Trump is a Nazi, or Trump is Hitler sign, and of course they're with the tax Wall Street party, and you know, Webster just laid into him with all this leftist rhetoric that Hitler is going to, or Trump is going to deport all these people, and he's going to build FEMA camps and all this other stuff that is just, I think, nonsense. The guy hasn't even been in power yet. He hasn't even. And
he doesn't have the brown shirts like he's accused of and all the rest of it. I mean, you know, look, Webster's in bed now with people like William Kristol who are attacking. I mean, I never thought I'd ever see something like that. You know, where William Kristol, who was raised on the teat of the CIA, his dad ran that whole Congress for cultural freedom and all that stuff, a big CIA front and everything. And Webster's on the same page. And it must really frustrate him because Donald Trump is saying a lot of things Tax Wall Street Party's been saying. He wants to put a tariff on Chinese goods. He wants to tax Wall Street. He doesn't want to have all these foreign interventions. It's half of the stuff he's saying is what the Tax Wall Street Party says they want.
Right. But I think because he's a guy that's made money and he owns property, which is, very anti-socialist. So you get people like Webster, voting against it. Incidentally, I named my dog Tarpley after Webster. So
I love Webster, but I'm sorry, I find it hard to follow him down the road right now. He seems to be going all over the place. And look, just because I tell everybody, just because you're a rich person from New York or the Upper East Coast doesn't mean you're a bad guy. Franklin Roosevelt, one of the greatest presidents we ever had, was a rich guy from New York, and he ran as a populist, and he was called worse than Hitler. And John F. Kennedy, also a rich guy from Massachusetts. I thought he was a pretty good president,
Yeah, I mean, you got to take people for what they're going to say and what they're going to do. You can't make up things that they're doing and saying, and then, we've got kids out there that are being programmed by their parents that he's racist, sexist, xenophobic. You see the same talking point come out because it was put in the news that way, that Donald Trump is racist, sexist, and xenophobic, and now you've got that talking point over and over again. And I'm not saying Donald Trump's the best candidate out there, but from what we have, except, say, Gary Johnson or even a John McAfee, whoever wins the Libertarian ticket, I'd like to see those guys in the debate as well, which I don't think we'll see, which is a shame, because we need to have more ideas and more discourse, not less discourse, because that's where we have problems, which is why I've enjoyed seeing all these Republican debates, even though they're ridiculous at times. At least you're getting these people talking, which the Democrats tried to avoid them for a long time. Now they're getting out there talking.
Well, I got news for you. Next cycle, the Democrats are going to be in disarray like this too. They sort of are already, but I don't think this is going away. If they block Trump and Bernie, it's going to build up, and even more pressure is going to build up. You mark my words.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think they've already stolen it from Bernie, and I don't think he's got a chance. And I'd like to see more of those people, cry out and go again, instead of just going, well,
Well, all right, but that's it for tonight. I'm sorry, but Rogers.